Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. I went and checked finally so I could get some of these introductions straight. This is the final special selection for last weekend, so this would have been Sunday's video. This request comes at us from Fabian. Says, would love to hear you react to Brand of Sacrifice Animal. So that's what we're going to do today. The band is called Brand of Sacrifice. The song is called Animal, and it came out in January of this year. So we're looking at a relatively new song. Let's get into this and go. Yeah, nice little like electronic intro. Oh. Just a lot of dissonance and harshness. Interesting use of space there. Alright, so we got the choir coming back. Two vocal styles, scream styles harmonizing with each other, texture harmony. Very cool call and response going on with the guitar work. Very cool tom run there. Interesting how I can understand some of the lyrics. Love that cymbal work. Alright. Fabian, man, why? Why we gotta do something like that? Jokes aside, obviously, I don't mind super harsh stuff. I think it's very interesting. One, it helps me flex my brain a little bit as a lot of heavier stuff ends up being more rhythmic based, which right here we have a lot of rhythm and texture writing rather than harmonic writing. So it kind of gets me out of my comfort zone and I start analyzing music from a different perspective than I usually do. So it's a nice little exercise for me. Plus, I do enjoy exploring the fringe of music, seeing where people take stuff, even though I would not say that this was an enjoyable listen. There was actually a lot of really interesting aspects to it, and there's certainly things that I can learn from it, despite not really enjoying the music. So, um, the first thing I want to pick up, I thought it was very interesting that I actually heard complete sentences here. There were a couple of lines I heard. One of them was something along the lines of, "I won't bow down to a world that doesn't acknowledge me," or something like that. Um, and they were like these really low guttural growls, but either well, it could be a mix of the way that he does it, the way that he produces the sound, or the mix itself. They kind of came through very clear, even though they weren't extremely enunciated. There were a few lines that just sounded like, a solid growl with a little bit of like mouth shape sounds uh uh coming out of it rather than, syllables that I could understand in the language. So it wasn't 100%, but there were a few lines I was like, yeah, I understood like 80% of those words. So that was really cool. I don't, like I said, I don't know if that was part of his technique or the mix, but either way, I love it when I can have that happen. I think I mentioned this I think it was yesterday for the Iapetus song, that for me growling is not a texture I particularly enjoy, but it becomes doubly worse for me as a listener when I can't even understand it. It's not so much that the texture is unpleasant to me, I also can't understand the words, and it's just a double whammy that has caused me to dislike growls. And I have come a bit of a way on this journey. We did do that awesome growls week, and it's helped. I'm slowly coming around to the technique, but the fact that I still have an issue understanding a lot of it is still a hurdle that I don't know. Maybe it's something I need to get over. I also kind of think that more people could get into growls if they were treated more like rap, where you need extra strong enunciation because of the delivery method, and you need that extra strong enunciation and maybe extra attack on the syllables to make it more clear. And I understand that sometimes you want that just sort of flowiness to the growls. It adds a texture to the music itself, but I don't know. As a listener who isn't big into it, that would be a huge thing to help with my accessibility with the vocal delivery, is enunciation and clarity in the words. Basically trying to get the technique out of the way of letting me understand what's happening. And I think it was really cool that at least a couple of times in this song, I was able to hear the words. Like I said, I don't know what that was from, but I'm glad it happened. Um, there is a lot of texture and rhythmic work going on in here. Not a lot of not a lot of melodic work. And that is something I've come to see as a pattern in some of this heavier metal, the more grittier, heavier, harsher musics in the metal realm, is that melody tends to take a step back, sometimes a huge step back, where it's just completely pushed out of frame, and we end up with music that is almost entirely rhythmic based or texture based. This song is written to sound heavy, to sound harsh, to sound brutal. And I would wager to say that melody is not on the mind of these guys at all, at least for writing this song. That's not to say that they've never written any melody in their life. I don't know. This is the first song I'm hearing from them. But for this song in particular, I would say that melody was not a concern at all. It was basically, how do we make this section sound amazing? How do we get that right texture? How do we get that atmosphere? How do we get that brutality? How do we get the anger or the heaviness to like maximum level here? And then they would write guitar riffs, or drum patterns, or vocal patterns to emphasize whatever they were going for with that section. Um, and not all of it is heaviness at its forefront. There's also a lot of work with dissonance. And we see some atonal guitar runs acting as flourish for the ends of heavily rhythmic patterns, riffs. Um, so it is a chaotic song that is more about the way that it feels than the way that it sounds. And a lot of that comes down to their composition style. Like I said, they're aiming for their main goal is to find an atmosphere created to deliver the brutality of the heaviness here. Not so much about finding which notes are going to perfectly fit with each other to achieve a similar atmosphere. If a similar atmosphere could even be felt. I mean, I've mentioned before that every composition tool is a tool. You can use it poorly and you can use it properly, but it's just a tool. So rhythmic writing and melodic writing, there is no one way to write a song that's better than the other. And for the most part, both can be used to achieve a similar end as far as a specific goal. If you want to make somebody feel sad, you can do it with melody, or you can do it with texture and atmosphere work. Um, it's all about how you're wielding your tools. However, this is just off the top of my mind. This is not extensive at all. I'm really coming to a brick wall here, trying to think of a way to use melody to emphasize the heaviness that we have seen in bands like this, or Gojira, or Krallis, or any of the bands. The Ocean? Is that the guys who do like the Pharenzoic, whatever, the ages of the earth for their albums? Is that the Ocean? Um, like these guys make these super heavy, oppressive sounds, these atmospheres. I don't know if that's possible without really getting into texture work. That might be a a huge advantage of texture and rhythmic work rather than melodic and harmonic. Speaking of harmonies, though, the vocalist, I think, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting with anything close to harmonies or melodies, and it's because he utilizes a range of vocal styles and kind of pulls out some overtones in his compression that allow for a semblance of notes to be heard. And he utilizes this occasionally in stacking his screams and growls to achieve a sort of harmonic effect on some notes. It isn't full on harmony because of the way that the overtones work. It'd be really difficult to really lay down any sort of um, note relationships or triads or anything like that, just because there's so many tones being shown, but we get senses of pitch through it. So we have higher screams and lower screams, and the growls are very guttural. They're even lower than that. And then he layers them, and we get these senses of harmony. However, he also does this interesting thing when he gets to the low end, especially when he wants to really emphasize a section or a word, and he'll layer his low fry, I think, with a low growl under it that is muted. It's a bit pushed back into the mix. And what that achieves is it gives him a super wide low fry. And yeah, it sounds monstrous and demonic. And it took me a couple of times of hearing it to really realize that it's multiple low, harsh vocals with one that's really in the spotlight, which is the key. It's what he's really wanting you to focus on, and then everything else is more texture, kind of building it into the sound that he wants. So a lot of that's pushed into the background so that we get more of the width of it, or maybe some extra distortion in there that he's not able to achieve on the his lower fry. And yeah, that's a really cool technique. I don't know how that would go about live, but I would really like to see. I've mentioned this before. I like to see multiple instruments played by multiple people. So I would kind of hope that somebody else in the band can supply one of the two types of harsh vocals. But I don't know. I guess you could do it with a backing track as well. They're becoming quite popular with what I call studio bands these days, um, where they write music where they're double tracking themselves, so they need a backing track live because they've played more tracks than is feasibly possible with the band members they have. Um, and I think studio bands are becoming a popular thing these days. So we're seeing a lot more bands doing backing tracks for live performances, and that's fine. I mean, they're still up there playing their instruments, but at the same time, it just disappoints me a little bit because I like to see as much done live as possible. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Um, yeah, I think that's about all that I have to say about this band. They are brutal and heavy and dissonant and pretty much the antithesis to everything that I listen to and have strong experience with analyzing. But I hope I came out with some interesting things, at least for fans of the band to think about, and maybe it helps them answer why they enjoy the band. And for future composers, maybe they have some new tools in their tool belt, toolbox, wherever you keep your musical tools, um, to play around with in the future. I know stuff like this really engages me to check out texture work in my music. I tend to write a lot of harmonic and melodic music, really working with note relationships and the way that those relationships change over periods of the music sections, chord progressions, stuff like that. Um, and not so much building an atmosphere out of textures and rhythms. My atmospheres tend to come from note relationships. And stuff like this always encourages me to kind of give that a shot and see what I can do with it. It's very much outside my wheelhouse, both in terms of analysis and creation, and also listening. So, yeah, this is just very foreign to me, but it inspires me to try it because the effects are palpable. You can feel the heaviness in this. And yeah, I kind of envy that. Like, everything that I used to write, they discard and they still write a good song. So, yeah. Those are my thoughts, though, of Brand of Sacrifice's Animal. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed it or didn't, if you learned anything, if you're going to take any of this to heart, if you're a composer and you're like, hey, I want to try that, let me know. Hit me up. Also, in the description box, if you're interested, there's links to the Discord server as well as the Patreon campaign and a bunch of adjacent links for spreadsheets and just everything related to the channel you can find in there, Twitter and stuff like that. Speaking of composing, we are in the middle of a composition jam, which is just a fun little 1 month activity to write a song within a specific restraint. And this month we are doing write a song in 5/4. It doesn't matter if there's, what genre it is, how long it is, how many instruments you got, whatever you want to do, as long as the song is in 5/4 from start to finish. And we have a chat room dedicated to help, whether you know what you're doing or you have no idea. Maybe you have a weak spot. Maybe, you're really good at writing the music, but putting it into a DAW and mastering it, working with VSTs, it's not your strong point. Maybe you have no idea what you're doing. It's your first song ever. I invite you, please join. That's what we're here for. It's all about practice and getting some peer review so you can improve. So that's all in the Discord server as well as, a bunch of other channels about just chatting about music. I'll be back with one more video today, And then we'll have 2 videos tomorrow starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, about music. All music, not just the music you listen to. Don't be cynical about music at all, or art at all. I don't know, this started as like a nice catchy thing, and I've expanded it into a mantra that does not fit cleanly within a few syllables. Be critical and not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.